Today I will teach you the way of the sword, the way of samurai. Lesson number 1, subscribe to my channel. Lesson number 2, like the video. Yo, y'all know who it is, man. I am Masquerade and I'm back again with another video. Today we'll be talking about Vagabond, and I won't lie, the guys who recommended Vagabond, I can't remember your names, man. You guys were in my comment section after the Berserk video, and you recommended that I read Vagabond, and thank you for that, because I have enjoyed my time reading this story. It took me about 2 weeks to finish. I binge read a lot of stories so I can get stuff on the channel for you guys, and yeah, so let's start with what Vagabond, like what I think and all that stuff, right? And why you should read it if you haven't read it. So I always say that a story is as good as its villain. I was talking bullshit because yeah, Vagabond has no villains. I was talking bullshit, and you know what? I was surprised that, okay, a story without villains? Kind of interesting. Now, I don't see these characters like Yuda, I think that's how you pronounce the name. I'm bad on pronunciations, y'all know how it is, and Kojiro and all that. I don't see them as antagonists, villains. They just the same as the main character, really just trying to learn the way of the sword. And that's pretty much how it is in Vagabond, and the obstacles just, they just show up in front of Musashi and he gotta take them down. So for a story without any villains, it's really good. It's the first story I've actually read that doesn't have a villain, and I really enjoyed this. Now, this story brings something new to my reading experiences. It's more about the way of life rather than being a swordsman, being a samurai. It's so interesting. Like, you're reading a story of a guy on a journey, basically, who's trying to become the number one samurai, the number one swordsman. But along that journey, it's more about life rather than being the swordsman, being the number one swordsman. And it's just crazy how this story, the direction that the story has taken is just damn. Okay, it's cool. I love it. It doesn't have many fights though, but the fights that are given in the story, they are very simple to read, very easy to follow. The story is not about fighting. It's more or less about how you as a person grow, what it is you see from this life, what you want to obtain from this life. And it's really cool that there's a story like that, because most of the time we see stories of characters who want to achieve certain goals and dreams, and they gain power every arc to obtain those goals, to achieve those dreams. But here Takahiko has taken a very different approach when writing Vagabond. Now, this is a story about a samurai on a journey and how he develops into the Miyamoto Musashi that we know from books and history. So who is this character Miyamoto Musashi? Well, let's get into that. So his character at the beginning is a lot different from the philosopher we know and love from the books, as we know. His character growth is one of the most interesting to read in manga, from a man who only sees violence to a man who begins to appreciate everything around him. So he wants to be the number one swordsman. He does all he can to just be aggressive, and he has all this bloodlust around him. But then he grows as a character and becomes the Musashi we know from the books. The Musashi who wrote the Book of the Five Rings. He becomes that Musashi throughout his journey. And I just think it's incredible that he went from the bloodlust Musashi to this Musashi who begins to appreciate everything that is around him. And the arc where they farm is just one of the best arcs in my opinion in Vagabond. He is most certainly one of the most interesting protagonists that I have ever read. I've read many characters and I've read many protagonists, such as I've seen Monkey D. Luffy from One Piece. Obviously, as you guys know, One Piece is my favorite manga. Characters like I wouldn't say Gon. I wouldn't say Gon from Hunter x Hunter, no. But they are interesting characters like Part 1 Naruto, very interesting character. I mean, Guts, I had Guts as one of my favorite main characters, and I think I'm gonna put Guts and Musashi now as my top one. I can't really take away Guts, man. Guts is Guts, you feel me? So I can't take away Guts. They will share that spot. They will share that spot for sure. So this story, it offers something interesting, an interesting perspective. It brings you into the Buddhist way of life, from how they live and how they perceive things. This is actually very interesting because they don't have much. Like throughout the story we see characters, you know, especially the farm arc, where they don't have much but they still appreciate life for what it is. I mean, Iori has to be one of my favorite side characters, bro. The guy is just wow. Like he's really cool, man. I love that kid, bro. Like if you read the story, you'll see why I love the kid. He's just cool as hell, bro. If you're looking for a story with rememberable lines, then you will find it here in Vagabond. Literally every 10 chapters they drop bars on bars on bars, bro. Oh, bro, dude, this is a philosophical story. You know how philosophy is, bro. They got bars, and I think there's a lot to learn from the story. I just don't think you just read it and say, yo, cool ass story. I think it's a story that you read and you actually learn certain things of life that you didn't before. I think it's really cool. As I said, there aren't a lot of fights, but they are detailed well. The story gives you the inner thoughts of the ones who are fighting, right? And this is one of the things that Vagabond does well. So you'd have Musashi who's fighting an opponent in a duel, and then you see his inner thoughts. What is he thinking while fighting? Is he happy to be killing people? Does he want to do this? You know, the conflict within him. It's really cool because most of the time when you read manga or you watch anime, you just see these guys fighting and thinking about what's my next move. Oh, I'm gonna do this. But in Vagabond, it's different. In Vagabond, it's way different. It's more about your inner conflict rather than the fight itself. I don't know, this is a story that I feel like is very different from what I know from manga. I truly think this is one of the most interesting and most unique stories I've ever read, to be honest. Now, as always, when I do these reviews and whatever, I always tell people what I like the most, and what I like the most is the main character himself and his journey. The way the emotional scenes are portrayed is one of the best things in Vagabond. It's not as well done as I would say in Berserk. I think Berserk shows really good emotion. I think the way the art style is as well, it just expands on that emotion. It just gives more flavor to it. In Vagabond, it's a little bit different. It's a little bit subtle. You can see the people suffering in the background, and then you see Musashi who's just trying to do his best. Like as I said, the farm arc is just one of my favorite, because you see Musashi just doing his best just to survive, and then you see the guys in the back, the guys in the village just dying of hunger and suffering. And this was very emotional because you could actually see these people had given up, and then you have an outsider like Musashi who's not even from the village, who's doing his best to fight for them, and they don't even realize this, and they just wondering why the hell this nigga trying to, you know, build fucking create a land where you can farm. It's interesting. This kind of reminds me of Vinland Saga a little bit, where Thorfinn goes on this farming arc journey just to get away from his past, and this arc in Vagabond also reminds me of that, to be honest. So I think the emotional scenes are portrayed very well in Vagabond. Not as I say, not as good as the other shows I've read, but it is very subtle. But if you actually pay attention and actually take in the moments, they are very sad in my opinion. And one of the best things that Vagabond does, right, that I like the most, well, actually this is the second thing I actually like, because I like Musashi. Like, the main character is what I like the most about the story, but the pacing of the story has to be one of the best pacings ever. I don't care what anybody says. If there's someone out there who says that the pacing of Vagabond is bad, you are crazy. The pacing is good. Now, the part that I did dislike was moving away from Musashi, but I'll get into that just right now. But the pacing of the story is good, right? We don't spend too much time in one area, and we don't, like, what happens in the story is that whatever is necessary to do, it will happen in that moment, and the author doesn't waste time. He really doesn't waste time. He will just get that shit done, and we're done with it, and we move on to the next part. We do not dwell on stupid stuff. Now, this is something about Eiichiro Oda does this, bro. He be having niggas just run around for 10 chapters with no objective, and that's annoying. As much as One Piece is one of my favorites, and is my favorite, actually, the pacing is horrible. I'm just gonna be honest. But anyway, what I dislike about Vagabond, as I said, now being away from Musashi is something I didn't like. It killed the pacing for me, because we went on to go to Kojiro's story, and I find Kojiro to be a very uninteresting character. I don't know how you guys feel about Kojiro, but I don't know, man. I just don't feel the guy. Now, the story also, what I dislike about it is that it doesn't give a lot of time to the side characters. Now, there is only one side character that I think is written well. I mean, there's Taquan, there's Iori, but Matahachi, for me, I think is a very well written side character, very well written. He's literally, bruh, that nigga who wants to be like everybody else, like who wants to be as successful as everybody else, and he has to lie to make himself look that way. And I think we all have seen a nigga like that, bro. It's either you are the nigga or you've seen a nigga like that, 100%. Now there are other stuff in the story that I neither dislike or like. These are just things that I think were cool. Now, as I said, Kojiro was an uninteresting character for me when reading it, but there was a time when I was sort of falling in love with him, and that was when he was still young, in his backstory. I think if Takahiko gave time to Kojiro's character in his backstory, I think I would have fallen in love with him and I would have liked the character. I just don't like the character, and it's not because he's a deaf nigga. Please, let's stop that bullshit, okay? There's just something about Kojiro that just doesn't click for me. I wish we at least got his inner thoughts, but how can he have inner thoughts, you know, if he's never even heard how to speak or doesn't know how to speak? It's just, I guess it is it is what it is in that case. As I said, Iori and Takuan are some interesting characters. They are more interesting characters than Kojiro, for sure, in my opinion. As I said, the farm arc does remind me of Vinland Saga, and as I said, the side characters I wish got more time. I wish that this happened. Now, one thing that I did notice is that Musashi and Kojiro are polar opposites. So you have Musashi who only sees the sword, and his way of fighting is through aggression, bloodlust, and he doesn't, you know, drink, he doesn't sleep with women. And then you have Kojiro on the other hand, who the way of the sword for him is basically being one with heaven and earth. He's different, right? He doesn't have that bloodlust. He's just purely peace. He just embodies peace. He has a childlike face. He loves women. Bro, this nigga got some game, okay? Like, a guy who can't speak got game, bro. Like, oh, dude, that is crazy. So yeah, he's completely different from Musashi, bro. Completely different, and I can't wait for their awaited duel. I don't know when, because it seems that Vagabond ain't never coming back. When I read Vagabond, bro, I was like, damn. And when I got to chapter 327, I was like, I can't wait for the next chapter. And I found out that Vagabond hasn't been continued for at least 7 years, y'all. 7 years. Please come back, Vagabond, please. I hate reading a story, catching up, and then I find out it's not being continued. I gotta see that fight with Musashi and Kojiro. Everybody want to see that fight. Now, what do you guys like about Vagabond the most? I know the art style, for me, I think it's just okay. I don't know if you guys like the art style, but what do you like the most? Most probably Musashi. Musashi's dope, isn't he? Yeah. But leave a like, leave a comment. This is Masquerade. I'm signing out, man. Peace.